Welcome back to another reading and correcting with me, Kindar, the Tiger Writes, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. These are where I read a chapter from one of my stories and correct it as I go. If you want to listen to them live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch, and if you want to support me, that is on my Patreon. Today we are doing chapter 34 of A Familiar Death. Marlot set the pad to speaker mode and placed it on the table. Give me some good news. First off, Afrina said, I hope you realize how lucky you got. How so? Marlot asked. Trembor tilted ear mirrored his own quizzicalness. I was sniffing around our Sego servers. They're decent. I found a handful of weakness your hacker could have exploited to get in, but they didn't leave any trace on any of them. Didn't leave any trace on any of them. Didn't leave a trace on them. So I went in myself, and there I wasn't anywhere near as he wasn't as anywhere near as careful. I found multiple instances of rewritten code, a few exploitative program, that kind of stuff. Anything you can use to identify him. Marlot asked, eager for assent. No, it's all generic stuff from the underground hiker sites. If if it wasn't for how good he was getting in and out, I'd say he's just an amateur, but my assessment is that he used them specifically so he wouldn't leave tracks for us to follow. So there's nothing. Not from that. No, sorry. But like I said, I do have something. I've done a full check of their servers, and I was about to leave when he came back in. He destroyed files and caused equipment to malfunction. Were you able to save any of the information? After a pause. That wasn't my priority. I didn't want to alert him to my presence while I traced his location. Like I said, he's good, and if he'd bolted, I'm sure he could have evaded me. Marlot sighed. There went his only evidence. I'm sorry, she said. Once I had his location, I did shut him out, but by then he'd already made a mess of it. And you're certain there's nothing there. It's all shredded. I can send you the raw information. You might see something I've missed, but I wouldn't expect it to hold up in court. What I do have are his name and address. Do you want it, or do I send that to the Information Crime Division? I'll take it. Send me the information, and thanks, Afirna. Next meet. I'm bringing you leftovers. He still felt down. He'd been hoping for proof to bring to the council, rub their nose in their own filth. His pad beeped. 2 files. One was the shredded data, the other the address. The name of the hacker was Rudar Flats. Didn't know him, although it sounded familiar, and the address was in Great Prairies. It made sense. The father would use someone local, easier to control him. Why didn't she stop him? Serene asked. Wouldn't that have solved all your problems? You would have had your information and she'd have the criminal. Marlot shook his head. That isn't how it works. He wasn't there physically. Stopping him would have given me the father species, but the hacker would have gotten away. But isn't the species what you're after? He leaned back. Yes, but her fear now works for the enforcers. Her goal is to catch the people committing the crime, in this case the hacker. I didn't think to tell her I needed the test results when I put her on the scent. To be honest, I didn't think he'd act that fast. One of the programs he left in the system was probably to alert him if more tests happened. Then they cleaned their system once they knew about the first attack? Probably, but those programs would be hidden. Even if they were looking for them, it sounds like he's good enough they wouldn't have found them. He picked up his pad and sighed. We don't have the species, but we have the hacker. Is he the killer? Marlot shook his head. There aren't any flats on the council, and those wrinkled X-suckers wouldn't know what to do with code if it sat up and walked them through it. He stood. The hacker is just someone who was hired to do the job. We should get going. I want to get what's left of our meal. Give this to Arana and be back here tonight. The lions stood. There was another round of hugs. We'll start working on the celebration, Irina said. Why are you highlighting both? Really? We'll have everything ready in a few weeks. Marlot forced the smile, a smile he didn't feel. The killer would get away with it. Yet one more death in that town, that would go on and go unpaid. Go unpaid. It hadn't mattered. Nago was of predation age. Marlot had wanted to bring the killer to justice. Show that cursed council they couldn't get away with what they'd wanted. It's going to be okay, Serene told him. Marlot nodded, but he didn't believe her. They wished the two of them a good trip, and they got on the road. Trevor watched his wolf drive in silence. Now that they were out of this city, he'd expected his wolf to pick up speed, hurry to get there and back. It took Marlot a full minute to acknowledge that Trevor had asked him a question. Marlot shook his head, shook his ears. He'd been like that ever since they'd left his parents' house. Shoulders slumped, staring ahead, but barely paying attention. The only reason Trembor hadn't taken over driving was that Marlot drove slowly through the street. Marl, talk to me. Sorry, Rolf finally said. If you don't want to go back, we don't have to get the rest of the body. You can send the information to Arana. You don't need to hand it in person. In fact, shouldn't it be sent to her by now, even if we're driving there? Won't that flat person destroy whatever information he has? It's already destroyed. So it doesn't matter how quickly we send it to her. The moment Arfiona shut down his hack, he knew he'd been found, so he destroyed any evidence he was involved. Couldn't she get in his system and get it? Mallow shook his head. She couldn't do that. Why not? Seems to me that's easy enough. Oh, it's easy, but you need to know her background. She was caught hacking the protector system when she was 19. She should have been eaten for that, but while her fate was being debated, one of the enforcers set her at the terminal and told her not to touch anything. She could have done anything in that moment. She could have erased herself from the system, given herself a new identity. What she did instead was document half a dozen exploits right in the middle of the enforcer server. When they brought her in to tell her what was about to happen, she gave them name, addresses of 4 hackers who tried to infiltrate the system while she was waiting. She stopped them. Well, Trembor prodded after a long silence. They took a few days to verify that what she said was true and arrested the hackers. After that, there was no way the enforcers would let her be eaten, but they couldn't hire her, so they worked out a deal. She became a consultant for them and was allowed to do security work for hire, but if she was ever caught taking information from a system the enforcers hadn't authorized her to get, the sentence that was going to be passed at that hearing would come down on her. That's harsh. That's how afraid they are of her they are. So no, she couldn't get in Flat's computer. But that was an enforcer case, which she took on my behest. As an RI, I might get away with hacking Flat's system myself to get the information, but I can't tell her to do that. I guess that technically I could, but if a judge decided Flat's hack hadn't really related to our case, which again, technically isn't even ours anymore, it's her life that ends. Then why go back? Just send Arana the information and go back home and snuggle for the rest of the week. He shook his head. I don't want to leave anything of mine behind. I know it doesn't make sense, but that body's mine, not theirs. Well, it's just meat. I know. Tremor nodded, leaned over and kissed the side of the wolf's muzzle. Okay, I won't bother you anymore. But since this is going to be a silent drive, do you mind sending me that file with all the shredded information? Mallow tilted an ear. You want to look at computer stuff? Tremor shrugged. It's something to do, he indicated the outside of the car. This was nice to look at the first time around, but there's only so much of the empty fields and trees I can look at before I go insane. I let out a small chuckle and wince. But Trembor considered it a victory. His wolf took out his pad and handed it to him. The file isn't locked. And that concludes Chapter 34 of A Familiar Death. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next chapter is going to be up, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read the story, the book, as well as the others in the series, they are available from all major e-retailer. If you want a different way to support me, that's on my Patreon, where you can also get access to just about everything I've written. And if you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. The links are in the notes, and with that, I shall wish you a good day.